Imagine this. For almost all of human history, nobody wore clothes. No shirts, no pants, no shoes, nothing. Yet today, nearly every person on Earth wears clothing every single day. So what changed? Most people think the answer is obvious. Humans got cold. They made clothes. Mystery solved. But here's the strange part. Scientists discovered evidence suggesting that the real story is far more complicated. In fact, some researchers believe humans may have started wearing clothes for a reason that had almost nothing to do with fashion, and maybe not even temperature. So what was the real reason humans started wearing clothes? To answer that question, we need to travel back tens of thousands of years to a world that looked nothing like the one we know today. A world filled with giant animals, massive predators, and humans who were still figuring out how to survive. The first thing we need to understand is that humans are unusual. Look around nature. Most animals are born wearing everything they need. Bears have fur. Wolves have thick coats. Birds have feathers. Even sheep grow their own wool. Humans, almost nothing. Compared to our closest relatives, we are surprisingly hairless. And that's where the mystery begins. Because if clothing was created simply to stay warm, why did humans lose so much body hair in the first place? That doesn't make sense. It's like throwing away a jacket and then spending years trying to replace it. Scientists struggled with this question for decades. Then they found a clue hidden inside our own skin. Long before humans invented clothes, our ancestors lived in hot African environments, running under the sun, hunting, walking long distances. Unlike most animals, humans became experts at sweating. Sweating helped cool the body, and having less hair made sweating much more effective. In other words, losing body hair may have helped early humans survive extreme heat. Problem solved. Or was it? Because losing body hair created a brand new problem. What happens when hairless humans leave warm regions? What happens when they move into colder places? Suddenly, those same bodies become vulnerable. Now, imagine a group of humans leaving Africa thousands of years ago. They travel farther north. The weather becomes colder. The nights become longer. The wind becomes harsher. Their bodies are no longer protected by thick fur. Something had to change. And most people assume this is where clothing enters the story. But here's where things become fascinating. Scientists cannot simply look at ancient clothes. Why? Because clothes usually rot away. Animal skins decay. Plant fibers disappear. The evidence vanishes. So how do researchers figure out when humans started wearing clothing? The answer sounds almost unbelievable. They studied lice. Yes, lice. Tiny insects may hold one of the biggest clues in human history. Here's why. There are different types of human lice. Some live in hair. Others live mainly in clothing. Scientists compared their DNA. By calculating how long ago these lice populations separated, researchers estimated when clothing became common. The result shocked many experts. The evidence suggested humans may have started wearing clothes, roughly 170,000 years ago. That's far older than many expected. But that discovery raised another mystery. If humans were already wearing clothes that long ago, what exactly were those clothes like? Certainly not jeans, certainly not jackets, not even woven fabrics. Those technologies came much later. The earliest clothing was probably simple. Animal hides, fur coverings, basic wraps. Nothing fancy. Just enough protection to survive. At least, that's what scientists originally thought. Then another surprising idea emerged. What if warmth wasn't the entire story? Think about it. Humans didn't just face cold temperatures. They faced sunlight, wind, dust, insects, sharp plants, dangerous environments. A layer of protection could help with all of these. In some regions, clothing may have acted like armor against nature itself. But even that might not explain everything. Because something strange happened as human societies grew. Clothing started changing. Not because temperatures changed, but because people changed. Imagine two groups meeting for the first time. How do they identify each other? How do they show status? How do they communicate without speaking? Suddenly, clothing becomes more than protection. It becomes information, a signal, a message. And this may have transformed human history forever. Researchers believe that at some point, clothing stopped being just a survival tool. It became part of culture. One group wore certain materials. Another group wore different designs. Clothing began telling stories. Where you came from, who your family was, what role you played. The fabric itself became a language. And once that happened, there was no going back. But the mystery gets even deeper, because some archaeologists think clothing may have helped humans cooperate on a larger scale. Here's why. Making clothing wasn't easy. Someone had to prepare animal skins. Someone had to scrape hides. Someone had to stitch materials together. This required skills, knowledge, and teamwork. The process encouraged specialization. People began developing unique roles, and those roles helped societies become more organized. A simple piece of clothing may have quietly helped shape civilization itself. But wait, there's another twist, one that completely changes how many people think about clothing. Let's imagine two early humans. Both are equally strong, both are equally healthy. One appears confident, respected, and important. The other does not. Which person is more likely to gain trust? Which person is more likely to become a leader? Even today, clothing influences how people are perceived. Studies repeatedly show that appearance affects first impressions. And although ancient humans weren't wearing business suits, the same psychological principle may have existed. Clothing became a social tool, a way to influence how others saw you, a way to display identity, a way to gain status. Suddenly, the story isn't about survival anymore. It's about society. And that's where things become truly fascinating. Because humans are unique. We don't just survive physically, we survive socially. Being accepted by the group has always mattered. In ancient times, exclusion could be deadly. Belonging was survival. And clothing may have become one of the most visible symbols of belonging. Wear what your group wears. Follow the customs. Show that you're part of the tribe. The clothing itself wasn't always important. The message was, and that message could determine how others treated you. Now let's jump forward. Thousands of years pass. Agriculture appears. Villages grow. Cities emerge. Trade expands. And clothing evolves again. People discover weaving. Textiles improve. Colors become available. Decoration spreads. Clothing transforms into something entirely new. A display of wealth. Some fabrics become rare. Some colors become expensive. Certain outfits signal power. Kings wear one thing. Workers wear another. The gap grows larger. At this point, clothing is doing far more than keeping people warm. It's helping structure entire societies. But here's the biggest twist of all. The real reason humans wear clothes today may be completely different from the reason clothing first appeared. Think about your own wardrobe. How often do you choose clothes based purely on temperature? Probably not very often. People choose clothing for comfort, style, identity, culture, religion, professional requirements, self-expression, confidence, and sometimes simply because everyone else does. The original purpose may have been protection, but over time, clothing became something much bigger. It became part of what makes us human. And this brings us to one final question. What was the real reason humans started wearing clothes? The honest answer is surprising. There probably wasn't just one reason. That's the mystery scientists have gradually uncovered. Clothing likely began as protection against environmental challenges, cold weather, sunlight, wind, insects, harsh conditions. But then something extraordinary happened. Humans gave clothing meaning. And once meaning entered the picture, clothing evolved beyond survival. It became culture, identity, communication, status, belonging, and self-expression. In other words, humans didn't simply invent clothing to protect their bodies. We transformed clothing into a tool for expressing who we are. And that may be the most human thing imaginable. The next time you put on a shirt, jacket, dress, or pair of shoes, remember this. You're participating in a story that began tens of thousands of years ago. A story involving ancient migrations, changing climates, tiny lice, lost civilizations, human cooperation, social identity, and one of the most remarkable inventions our species ever created. What started as a practical solution became a symbol of humanity itself. And perhaps that's the real reason clothing matters. Not because it covers us, but because it tells the world who we are. And that story is still being written every single day.